Greetings, anatomy and physiology students. This is part 1 of 3 for chapter 1, Human Body Orientation. I'm Dr. C, and that's Bits. Kibbles is in another room. While the term anatomy technically means a cutting open, it's really the study of the structure of body parts and their relationships to one another. Anatomy is usually broken down into two categories: gross anatomy, which is things you can see with your eyes, and microscopic anatomy, which requires a microscope to view smaller parts. Sometimes texts will further break down anatomy into developmental anatomy, which includes the study of embryology. Physiology is the study of the function of the body, which is dependent upon the structure. And physiology can also be broken down into different areas of study, including organ physiology, such as renal physiology or cardiac physiology, systemic physiology, where someone might study the function of the digestive system, and it can be further broken down into cellular physiology. And there's a branch of physiology known as pathophysiology, where the process of disease is studied. In terms of how the human body functions, structure and function are interdependent. That's what they refer to when they talk about the complementarity of structure and function. The structure or form dictates how something can function. Imagine a square wheel versus a round wheel. A round wheel has better function. And anatomy dictates physiology in the human body. When we look at structural organization, going from the smallest parts of our bodies, we start with atoms. When atoms are put together, they make up structures called molecules. When molecules join together, they make up structures referred to as organelles. Organelles are the little organs of cells. Just like your body has organs within it to make it function, each cell has a little version of an organ called an organelle to help it function. When cells with a common function join together, they form a structure known as a tissue. When two or more tissues with a common function are joined together, that's when we get to the next level of structural organization known as an organ. Organs with similar functions joined together or acting in a common function, because they're not always physically joined together, make up what we call organ systems. A good example of organs joined together, functioning together, would be the digestive system. A good example of organs that have a common function that aren't necessarily physically joined together would be the endocrine system. Either way, those are different systems of the 11 body systems. And those body systems make up an organism. Looking more closely at the chemical level, we see atoms combining to form molecules. There's lots of different kinds of molecules in the human body, including water, ions, different salts, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, just to name a few. When molecules join together, they can produce structures that we call organelles. Anytime you see a word with the ending ELLE or ULE, that ending denotes a smaller version of the preceding root word prior to it. So an organelle is a smaller version of an organ. These are the little pieces, parts inside cells that make cells function. These include things like mitochondria, ribosomes, rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, the nucleus, just to name a few. When we put organelles together, we make cells. Cells are the basic functional unit of living things. In the human body, we've got a multitude of different types of cells: liver cells, skin cells, bone cells, muscle cells, red blood cells. And you'll be learning about these as you learn about each system. Groups of cells that work together for a specific function create a tissue. There are 4 main categories of tissues in the human body, including epithelial tissue, muscle tissue, nervous tissue, and connective tissue. Within these 4 categories, there are different types, which you'll be learning about in the future. Groups of 2 or more tissues working together to form similar functions make up organs. There are different organs in the human body. We have a few examples listed on this slide, including the liver, the pancreas. The femur is a bone. All bones are organs. We have listed the brain. Skin is an organ. And there are many other organs in the human body. When organs function together to have a specific purpose, that's what creates an organ system. There are 11 organ systems in the human body. This slide has 6 of those organ systems pictured. Make sure you are very familiar with each of the organ systems, the organs found within those systems, and the function of that system. Finally, all the organ systems work together to maintain life of the individual and the species. This includes you, me, and all the critters, including bits. Here we have a slide that you can print out from the other attached PowerPoint slide in Blackboard. This is slide number 13. Feel free to print it out and practice. You can also do this with slide 14. Would be a good thing to do. Organisms have basic life functions, including maintaining boundaries, movement, responsiveness, digestion, excretion, reproduction, growth, and metabolism. Metabolism is a word with which you may be familiar. Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in your body. Survival needs are requirements that the body needs to survive, to maintain life. These needs include nutrients, oxygen, water, normal body temperature, and appropriate atmospheric pressure. Most people don't realize atmospheric pressure helps air flow into our lungs passively. When we breathe, when we inhale, our diaphragm moves downward below our thoracic cavity. That creates more space in the thoracic cavity. When there's more volume, there's less pressure, so air flows passively into our lungs from high pressure to low pressure. High pressure outside to the lower pressure we created when we created more space. Increased volume equals decreased pressure. It's inverse. If there's not enough pressure outside our body, for instance, if we were to go into a higher elevation where air pressure decreases, atmospheric pressure decreases, it makes it harder to have an appropriate pressure gradient. That's why it gets more difficult for many people to breathe at a higher altitude, which is what is normally referred to as mountain sickness. Normal body temperature at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit is a range. Not everybody has a normal body temperature of 98.6. My normal body temperature is 97.1. If I measure 98.6, I probably have a fever. You'll notice that water on this slide is measured between 40 and 75% in humans. Remember maintaining boundaries in the previous slide as a basic life function? Our skin acts as a boundary not just for pathogens, but also for bacteria, and it helps keep water in our bodies. When people have severely traumatic burn injuries, it damages the skin and burns it off. If it's a severe enough burn, that leaves the person at risk for dehydration, depending on the amount of surface of skin that's burnt away, because the skin actually helps keep water inside our bodies. Homeostasis is the process of maintaining a relatively stable internal environment despite continuous changes internally and externally. Examples would be maintaining blood glucose levels at between 70 and 110 milligrams per deciliter, or the pH of blood between 7.35 and 7.45. Those are just two examples of many. The body is continuously monitoring what's happening inside so that it can adjust and make those changes. Homeostasis is regulated by two body systems. The nervous system delivers short-term, rapid, specific effects, whereas the endocrine system has a much longer-term, widespread, slower effect on the human body. You'll be learning more about the endocrine system in AMP2. Homeostasis is based upon the fact that there are set points or normal values. Again, these are not the same for each individual. As I already mentioned, my normal body temperature is 97.1. Each person has a normal for himself or herself. It's always a good idea to ask the person before you take vital signs if he or she happens to know what his blood pressure or temperature normally is. Most adults know that information. Homeostasis is maintained by special systems referred to as feedback loops. There are two types of feedback loops: negative feedback loops and positive feedback loops. When we look at homeostatic control mechanisms, we can see there are three main portions involved in these mechanisms in this order. In order for a change to be detected, it must be detected by a receptor. Receptors are designed to detect changes internally and sometimes in our external environment. Baroreceptors are responsible for detecting changes in pressure. Chemoreceptors are responsible for detecting chemical changes. Mechanoreceptors detect mechanical changes. Proprioceptors detect changes in body position. Nociceptors detect changes when there is tissue damage due to the chemicals released by those damaged cells. Thermoreceptors detect changes in temperature. The information gathered by receptors is sent to a control center. The control center includes the brain and the spinal cord. Depending on the type of information being processed, information may go only to the level of the spinal cord and back out to the body. Most commonly, it goes up to the brain for further processing. From the control center, a decision is made on a response, and the brain will send messages, depending on the response that needs to be generated, to effectors, which are muscles and glands. One example would be touching something that's hot and withdrawing the hand before too much tissue damage occurs. Negative feedback mechanisms are the primary method of regulating homeostasis in the human body. These feedback loops are referred to as being negative because the action directly opposes a deviation from normal limits. This helps provide a long-term control over what's going on in the body internally and helps to maintain a normal range or set point. If we look at the slide at the picture or flowchart on the right side of the two, you can see that with body temperature regulation, if we start at the top, when body temperature exceeds 37 degrees Celsius, which is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, the nerve cells in the skin and in the brain are going to detect the increased temperature. That will stimulate temperature regulatory centers in the brain to send signals to sweat glands throughout the body. When the sweat glands are stimulated, sweat will evaporate off the skin to help cool the body down. When the body cools down, that's working in the opposite direction of the original stimulus that started this process, which was an increase in temperature. If we increase temperature, a negative feedback loop will work in the opposite direction to bring it back down to normal. So it's negative, it's going in the opposite direction. Positive feedback seldom happens in everyday life. With positive feedback, we get a stimulus that causes changes that are going to add on to one another, building more and more until we have a desired result. Labor is a great example of a positive feedback mechanism because when the head of the baby pushes against the cervix of the uterus, that causes nerve impulses to be transmitted up to the brain. The brain in turn will stimulate the pituitary gland to release a hormone known as oxytocin. Oxytocin, as it's released from the pituitary gland, goes into the bloodstream, and when it finally reaches the uterus, it will stimulate the uterus to contract. Those contractions push the baby closer to the cervix. That causes more signals to go to the brain, more oxytocin to be released, and there's that building of more. So instead of working in the opposite direction, there's an adding on to, okay, plus positive feedback, there's an adding on to the original effect of contractions until a desired result, which would be the delivery of the baby. Blood clotting is a very good example also of positive feedback. I'm going to stop this video here and pick this up on slide 22 of 45. If you've noticed, I've cut out some of the pictures on these slides to make the file a little smaller. It helps upload videos. I'll see you in part 2.